So there was another office that was known as the Prime Ministers or Katikiro. Katikiro, who was the Prime Minister. He was the Prime Minister. So he was the next most powerful person in the kingdom. He was the next most powerful in the kingdom. He helped or enabled Kabaka in his leading or in his administration. He also gauged the people who are going to visit Kabaka. Before you went to Kabaka, you had to pass through the Katikiro or the Prime Minister. And then also he organized the army and planned the army's activities. That was the work of the Katikiro, the Prime Minister. He also educated or dealt with cases, minor cases that did not require the attention of Kabaka. That was his other role. He also planned public works, the works that were supposed to happen in the kingdom. It was the duty or the work of Katikiro, among other duties. So together with Katikiro and the head chief, they instituted or were the ones who made or put the Kabaka, the reigning Kabaka, on his throne, the clan head, who was known as Mugema. So the two, there was another one known as Mugema. So the two, who was the clan head? So these two instituted Kabaka into office, right? So that is their work. So immediately we say, for example, a king has passed on and the son is going to take over the reins. It was the duty of Katikiro, who was the prime minister, and Mugema, the clan head, the head of all the clans, were the ones who would institute the Kabaka into his position. Now, we said that Kabaka, or we have learned that Kabaka was the overall head. So Kabaka was at the head. Kabaka was at the head, and we have said he was the king. He was the king of the kingdom. That is what Kabaka means. He headed or he ruled over the whole land. So after Kabaka, the kingdom was divided into divisions, 10 divisions that were known as the Saza. We can call them counties. Like, for example, in our country, we have one nation, which is Kenya. It is subdivided into how many counties? 47 counties. But now, the kingdom of Uganda, or the Buganda, not Uganda, the Baganda Kingdom, was divided into Sazas. We could equate that to the counties we have in our land today. We had the Sazas. So these Sazas were ruled by Saza Chiefs. You're saying the whole kingdom, it is this is the kingdom. We have the kingdom here. And then from the kingdom we have the Sazas, who are appointed. The Saza Chiefs were appointed by Kabaka. Right? I want you to get that. Kabaka was the head of every or the whole kingdom. But the kingdom was subdivided into small divisions that were known as Sazas. So the Sazas were ruled by the Saza Chiefs. right? The Saza chiefs were appointed. We said a duty of Kabaka was to appoint the chiefs. He appointed, transferred, and dismissed chiefs. So these Saza chiefs were appointed by Kabaka, and he gave them land. Actually, he would subdivide the land and give them to the chiefs to ensure they were loyal to him. So if a chief was disloyal to the Kabaka, he would be dismissed and his land taken away. So to make sure that the chiefs were in line, Kabaka gave them land. So the Sazas were further subdivided into subdivisions, or what we could call in our current day sub-counties, which were known as Gombololas. Gombolola. Right? Gombolola. I want you to get that. The kingdom was owned by who? Kabaka. Right? And then the kingdom was divided into divisions that were known as the Saza. Right? Now, every Saza had further subdivisions, which were known as the Gombolola. Right? These Gombololas were led by people referred to as Gombolola chiefs. The head were led by the Gombolola chiefs. So these chiefs were under the Saza chief. So for example, we have one Saza. It has its own subdivisions of Gombololas, right? And then now this one, now we go to the lowest political structure that was known as the Muluka. This was the lowest or the smallest. Those were the villages, right? They were led by the Bataka. The Bataka chiefs, right? So that is now the political structure of the kingdom of Uganda. We had at the highest level, we had the Kabaka. We had the Kabaka at the highest level. And then after him, we had the Saza chiefs. After him, we had the Gombolola chiefs, and then the lowest, who are the Muluka. Now, we ask ourselves, what were the duties of these chiefs? What were the duties of these chiefs? The first one was to maintain law and order in the areas of leadership. And then number two, they were supposed to provide manpower for the army. It was the duty of the chief to make sure that he has provided men, right? And then he was also to try cases or adjudicate cases in the areas. So for example, if we are having a conflict between Gombololas, they would go and solve it with the Saza chief. So if the Mulukas are having a conflict, they have to go and be interrogated by the Gombolola chief. So if we are having issues among the families, they would be handled by the Bataka. So that is the structure. That was the other structure. And then another duty was to collect taxes. The chiefs were also supposed to collect taxes on behalf of Kabaka. Remember, Kabaka was the trustee of every land. So the taxes that had been apportioned to the people, it was the duty of the chiefs to go and get them or collect those taxes. Now, apart from this system, which was the kingdom, the Kabaka, through the works of the army, right, he was able to conquer other states or neighboring communities, right, which became states or part of the kingdom. So these were known as the vassal states, right? So these were states that had been conquered. These were states that had been conquered by Kabaka through his army. So they were led by Batongole. So these were the leaders or the people who ruled these states. But these states had to pay homage, or they had to respect and pay tribute to Kabaka. And then, as we have been mentioning, they had the kingdom had an army. They had a standing army, a very strong army that was involved in protection of the community. They protected the community from external attacks, and also they made raids or conquests. So they would go and attack other communities and expand the boundaries of the kingdom. That was the work of the army. Also, there were different symbols. There are different symbols of unity. The first one was who? Kabaka was the symbol of unity. He was the one who signified the unity of the kingdom. Also, there was the throne where Kabaka sat on. That was a symbol of unity. It was referred to as Namulondo. It was referred to as Namulondo, right? That was the throne. The throne that was sat on by the Kabaka. Apart from these, there were other items. We had spears that were kept at the palace, right? At the palace, these were symbols, just symbols that signified the unity of the kingdom. Now, the last thing that I want us to discuss, apart from Kabaka and having those two, the prime minister, the Mugema, and those chiefs helping him to lead, right? We have talked over the head, who was who. We have the Saza, right? And then we have the Gombolola, we have the Bataka, Katikiro, Mugema. These are people that helped Kabaka to lead the whole kingdom. So apart from them, there were other officials. There were other officials that supported. So let us look at the officials that helped Kabaka in the administration of the kingdom. Let me underline with this. The officials, and actually it was not one, there were several. The officials. So the first one, as we have mentioned, was Katikiro, which we said he was the prime. He was the prime minister, right? We also had the Mugema, or who was the head chief, right? The chief most among those ones. And then we also had another one who was known as Omulamuzi. This was the chief justice. We also had the queen. We had the queen mother. We had the queen mother and the queen and the sister. So the eldest sister to the Kabaka and the mother to the Kabaka also were advisors. These were the main advisors of the king. And then we also had the Mufumbiro. Mfumbiro, this was the chief. Baker, he was concerned with the affairs or running the palace, how the palace was running. That was the work of the Mfumbiro. Now, apart from these officials, there was another body that included these chiefs, the chiefs and the Kabaka, together with the Katikiro, formed a legislative body. They formed a legislative body that was known as Lukiiko. Lukiiko. This was the legislative body, right? It was the legislature. They were concerned with making the rules. They were concerned with making the rules or the regulations of the kingdom, and also they advised the Kabaka on running the kingdom, on issues that affected the kingdom, and also they assisted the Kabaka in officiating disputes, different disputes. So it was a collection of the chiefs together with Kabaka and the Katikiro. So they would assist in settling of disputes, and then they also directed on collection of taxes. What taxes to impose on the people? They were able to make decisions. And also, now that they are chiefs, right, they brought the desires or the aspirations of the people to Kabaka, and lastly they helped on the general administration of the kingdom. So they generally helped Kabaka to lead or to partake the kingdom. But one thing I need you to understand, my dear learner, much as the Lukiiko was helping or was involved in running the affairs of the kingdom, Kabaka would overrule. The Kabaka would overrule. If they made a decision, Kabaka would overrule or refuse to impose the decision that had been made by Lukiiko. They were very important. They were the legislative body. But in case Kabaka disagreed with them, the opinion or the decision of the Kabaka overtook or took precedence. So that is all about the political